It's Ash from Super Videos back for another video. This is going to be my things you may have missed and Easter eggs for 7/13 of The Walking Dead, which was called Bury Me Here. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the first scene from the episode. It's the opener. So we basically see Ezekiel put one cantaloupe inside this box and they put it in the back of the truck. But what people may have missed is that this scene is actually from the future. So when we saw this at the beginning of the episode, it was out of order. So this scene happens after. So this is basically when Ezekiel, Richard, and the others go back to get another cantaloupe, to get the cantaloupe they were missing, to take it back to the Savior. Now, if you do notice here, you see the blood stain in the back of the truck. That's actually Ben's blood. Now, in my review, I may have actually said that this is them trying to pay their respects to Ben, but I think I'm wrong there. I think this is actually, like I said, from the same time that they're bringing back the one piece of cantaloupe that they were missing. Right before they actually go to do their drop, we have this conversation between Richard and Morgan. So Richard is saying his goodbyes. He's saying things that one would say when they're about to die. So it's like foreshadowing Richard's fate. And also Richard says something that's very interesting. He says, when you have to kill, don't beat yourself up about it. And that comes into play at the end of the episode as well, when Morgan is forced to kill Richard. And he has to not beat himself up about it because it's something that needed to be done, in his opinion. And that's basically foreshadowing what happens at the end of the episode. The next thing we have, when Ben gives Morgan this gift, it's actually some art piece that has like a circle in there, which makes sense because for Morgan at least, everything seemed to come full circle. So at the end of the episode, he went back to his clear mode. So he started from that mode, and then after all of that time, it's like he went back to whatever he was at that point in time in his life. So it's like everything is coming full circle. Then the next part, we have Ben asking Carol if he can basically go with her to learn how to survive. Carol disagrees and says you should go do your drop. In this instance, Carol could have saved Ben's life. If she agreed to take Ben with her, Ben wouldn't have died. Now, I'm not saying it's Carol's fault. Of course it's not, but I just think it's very interesting that Carol had the ability to save Ben's life, which is very cool. The next thing, which I'm pretty sure everyone got, is the grave that Richard dug and said, bury me here when I'm dead, referring to Ezekiel and the others burying him there when he ends up sacrificing himself after the drop, which he was assuming would happen. And that actually relates to one of the photos that we received before the start of the second half of season 7, the one with the grave. Initially, when that image was dropped, I did speculate that it might have something to do with the kingdom. I wasn't sure because, of course, the location of that specific grave image didn't look like the kingdom. And obviously, it's not the kingdom. It's around the kingdom area, which made it harder to speculate ahead of time like that. The next part is also connecting to the images we got before the second half of season 7 started. If you remember, we got an image of some cantaloupes or melons in one of those images that we received before the start of the second half of season 7. And that's basically connecting to what happened in this episode. They were short on cantaloupes. And this cantaloupe was a major part of the entire story in this episode. So they foreshadowed or hinted at what's to come in the future, which is pretty cool. So the next thing before they get to where the exchange is about to happen, we have Jarrett who's like playing around with a stick. That's actually the same staff stick that Morgan had. If you remember, during the last drop, Jarrett took that stick. So he's just being an asshole and playing with it, bringing it back in Morgan's face, kind of like, I still have this and things like that. And if you remember, in this episode, he actually drops it, or Gavin, who's the lead savior, forces him to drop the stick, which he does, and then, of course, Morgan gets it back by the end of the episode. The other thing, when Jarrett shoots Ben, Gavin is actually very surprised and very angry at Jared. That's because the protocol that the Saviors have is to kill someone if they're short on supplies. They don't really have a rule to shoot someone in the leg or something like that. So in Gavin's mind, Jared was supposed to shoot Richard in the head and execute him, which he didn't do, which of course made Gavin very angry because Jared did something that he wasn't supposed to do. He didn't follow the orders. The next thing, right before everyone gets to Carol's cabin, when they bring Ben, we have Carol, and then we have a basket beside her with some seeds, some strawberry seeds, I believe. Now that is also connecting to one of the images we got before the second half of season 7 started. We got an exact image, if you remember. I have it on screen right now, so that's a pretty cool Easter egg there as well. Now the next thing, I think pretty much everyone missed it because as I was reading through comments on other videos and reaction videos and things like that, I did notice that people didn't make out what Benjamin was saying when he was about to die. So Benjamin's last words or his dying words were, "To injure your opponent is to injure yourself." And that's actually a phrase that was in the book that Morgan gave Ben to read about all life is precious and that whole philosophy book that Morgan gave Ben. So next we have Morgan and his flashback scenes. If you didn't notice, those flashback scenes were all over the place. There were flashback scenes from the same episode when they were on their way to the drop, which is basically what led to Morgan figuring out that Richard took one of the melons out and sabotaged the plan. But also there was flashbacks of the first episode of season 1 of The Walking Dead, Days Gone By, with Morgan, his son, Dwayne, and his wife, and also a lot of flashbacks from the Clear episode, season 3, episode 12, I believe, from that time. So we had a couple flashbacks here and there, which was very cool, and it basically gave us a look inside Morgan's mind. So we're seeing what Morgan is saying inside his mind. It's like all over the place. It's like PTSD. He's not able to concentrate and he's just all over the place. The other thing, if you notice the upside down yellow basket kind of thing that's there, that's actually the exact same basket that has the cantaloupe hidden under it. A few minutes after Morgan's flashbacks, he kicks this yellow basket and then the cantaloupe rolls from under it. So that's where the cantaloupe was. So next, when we have Morgan choking Richard, I was very surprised that none of the other Kingdomers were actually stepping in to help. And it just didn't make sense to me. And I did refer to that in my review as well. But a lot of people have actually corrected me and have told me that the Kingdomers have stayed there, didn't do anything because the Saviors asked them not to. So Gavin, who's the lead Savior, basically demanded that Ezekiel and the others stay back. So that's why they didn't do anything. Of course, if they did something, the Saviors may kill someone else. So it was a good call on their part. Now it makes a lot more sense to me, and that specific scene seems less weird. So upon looking at it one more time, I did feel like it made a lot of sense and it felt natural. Originally, when I was watching it, it didn't feel organic. It felt forced in a way. But now that I view it, knowing that the Saviors told them to stay back, which I actually heard as well, it actually makes a lot of sense. The next thing, when Morgan is talking after Ben's death, he's actually saying Dwayne's name. Dwayne is Morgan's son, so he's basically mistaken Dwayne for Ben. Ben was young, Dwayne, his son, was young, so in a way, Ben was just like Dwayne to Morgan. And his death basically pushed Morgan over the edge. And he just couldn't separate the past and Dwayne's death with what's happening now, which is Ben's death. Which is why he said that Dwayne would have still been alive if Richard didn't do that. Of course, he was referring to Ben. The next thing I want to say is how similar Morgan and Richard's storylines are. They both lost their wife and also lost their children because they didn't do anything about it. The last thing I want to mention here is something that's very interesting. So, of course, by the end of the episode, we have Ezekiel agreeing to go to war, but not today, of course, as he said, and he's planning the garden with Ben's little brother and Carol. Now, if you think about it, before Rick went to war with the governor, that's exactly what he did as well. He planted the garden. And then after that, we had the war coming up. So that was there right before the war started. And in the same way, before all out war starts, or before the war against Negan and the Saviors start, we have Carol this time planting a garden with Ezekiel. So that was a cool parallel that they had with these two storylines, with the governor's storyline and with Negan's storyline. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll be back for another video.